All right, welcome back to Cyber for Hire, the Managed Security Podcast. Once again, I'm Bradley Barth with SC Media. In the first half of our show, we spoke with security thought leader Ira Winkler about risk quantification and optimization. But right now, I'd like to welcome back in my fill-in co-host, Jason Albuquerque, because it's time for us to examine our MSSP industry strategy topic of the week, presenting our big idea in business: generating economies of scale with your MSSP business model. Managed services providers know that investments in talent, tools, and infrastructure can take a heavy financial toll. But as MSSPs continue to grow and take on more clients, they can hopefully achieve certain economies of scale such that their previous infusions of funds eventually pay for themselves. This session will look at the key investment areas where security providers can get the most bang for their buck as they expand their business and grow their customer base. Jason, welcome back. We're going to jump right into things as we always do. Explain why the notion of economies of scale is so important in the MSSP industry. And when you've reached an economy of scale as an MSSP, when that threshold is hit, what kind of efficiency ratio are we talking about here in terms of revenue over expenses?
So importance, economies of scale and process improvement is really our competitive advantage over our competition. Ultimately, it creates efficiencies, quality, eliminates non-value add from your organization, and it allows you to have that competitive advantage. So you're driving margin and driving profit as you're realizing economies of scale because you can do more with less within your organization. Provide those quality services efficiently, effectively, with less overhead. So that's the goal there, is to really constantly focus on the efficiencies and the economies of scale that you can drive throughout the business. So quite a while back, early in my career, in my first leadership role, I had a mentor. And for me, I always have my own personal board of directors. This is something that I have for myself, where I have these folks that I can lean on for advice over the course of my career. And, the advice that I got was technology and blinky lights on top of a ruined process creates no efficiency, no effectiveness, and can undermine your business. So taking that, I really dove into lean process improvement methodologies. And I integrated that into my leadership skills for an organization, which ultimately got me to where I am in my career today. I went from a director to a CISO to a CIO and CISO of a $500 million IT services and MSP organization to now chief operating officer of a consulting company, right? Managing that effectiveness, managing that process improvement, those economies of scale, and how we can build a better competitive advantage every single day. So you had mentioned also that once you hit that threshold, my belief is there is no threshold. We can always fine tune. We can always improve. We can always look at the business and figure out how we can get better process improvement, more economies of scale, and really eke out profit as much as we possibly can time over time.
All right. Well put. Well put. Although I don't know why you want to take away our fun by taking away the blinky lights. The blinking lights are always fun to look.
They're part of the puzzle. But not the whole puzzle.
Fair enough. Are there any managed services in particular that you feel like scale up well as your company base grows? Yeah. And conversely, which ones might be more challenging to scale up and require more resources or introduce more complexity?
Yeah, it's the scenario of migrating more toward the consultative professional services aspects of the business versus supporting legacy things like hardware and iron, right? So easy to scale is consulting services. One of the things that our organization is doing really, really well right now is we call it CXO services, and you put the X where you need it, right? So whether it's CISO services, CTO services, CIO services, we have the seat at the table with the leadership of the organization, helping them design strategies around their program, whether it's their IT program, their cybersecurity program, their risk management program. We're helping them with those strategies. And in turn, that's something that allows us to get deeper and wider into the customer base in order to sell additional services. So when you're having those conversations at that CXO level, we're making recommendations for services. And by the way, it's in our portfolio. So if you want to take advantage of it, let's dig into our portfolio. You can learn about that, and then we can bring those services to the table to help that company grow.
We were just talking a little bit about services that are that you already have that you can then scale and grow bigger. There might also be a temptation, though, as you grow as an organization, to also add more services. Now, we did an episode a little while ago talking about, go broad or stay specialized with your services. But how does the scale question and the ambition to scale affect this decision in terms of whether or not you should also add more to your repertoire?
Yeah, I think it's a diligence exercise, right? So we have, and this is something that I've done over the course of the last few organizations that I've worked for on the MSP/consulting side, is have a product operations process that exists within your organization. So when an idea comes about anywhere in the organization about a potential new service, you have to run it through a diligence process. Number one, have an executive summary on what this offering would bring to the table, how it would benefit a client, and what would it take to support it. Whether it's software, people, hardware, whatever type of investment you need, you're bringing those expenditures to the table. That goes to a group of folks who can vet that, turn around and say, is there a market for this? Can we drive revenue? And does it meet the margins that we expect out of the services that we offer in our portfolio? And does it complement our portfolio? And if the answer to that is yes, then you go through an operationalization of this, right? So you figure out, how would we actually build this offering? How do we enable our marketing team, enable our sales team, our implementation team? You build out the technical implementation planning, and then from there you go to market with it. So it is a diligence process, but upfront is the vetting side of it that determines whether or not it's an offering that you should even put in your portfolio in general.
Yeah. Jason, I'm actually going over this next question. I'm going to hit the rewind button for a second and skip back to my previous question, because I know that when I asked you about what services scale up well, you had mentioned things like consulting services, CEO, CIO type services are the types of things that can scale up well. I did also want to know which ones might be a little bit more challenging in terms of being a burden on your resource or introduce more complexity into your organization. And I don't know if we really ended up discussing that too much, so I want to reemphasize that and ask you what particular managed services are a little bit more difficult to scale up, and why?
Yeah, it's a lot of the legacy services, right? So managing the iron that's on-prem in organizations. If you're doing endpoint management or traditional MSP support services, specific clients can present a lot of influx of incidents and tickets and need. So that's always a challenge, right? Because it's really keeping an eye on utilization of your team and positive utilization, meaning, billable work time for the client, and making sure that you're pricing these contracts accordingly. Because you're going to have customers who have high need, who are probably higher risk to your organization. So being able to classify your clients based on those type of engagements, the need, the acumen, their technical talent, and really how much oversight from your team they're going to need, pricing those out accordingly is very important, because you can start losing money, right? Based on what those clients bring to the table. So I see a lot of those heavy hitters as the endpoint management and really managing the iron, the assets, the physical assets for customers.
All right, so Jason, let's talk best practices a little bit. I'm sure some of our listeners would be very interested in hearing what would be some of your top recommendations for how to scale up successfully.
Yeah, so out of the gate, understand the business, right? Start embedding yourself in your business, knowing your client base. I highly recommend to organizations having a client advisory board. Highly, highly recommended. That's where you're going to get feedback from the organizations that you support, That's where you're going to get connections into the leadership of those organizations, because it's usually going to be your highest level stakeholder who's part of that advisory board, and really start grooming that information and using it to your benefit. That feedback loop is so important. You don't want to get the feedback only in a net promoter score or a survey that you're sending to the customer. You want to be able to get that genuine feedback in an advisory capacity, that you can take that information back and make strategic changes within your organization. You're going to hear about potential product offerings that you can add to the mix based on the client need that's validated by your existing client, and know that you could actually sell it into your market. So having that advisory board, I think, is one of the most important things you can do to keep your business effective, efficient, support the needs of your clients, and be able to get that innovative insight as to what net new offers could come on board later on.
Mm-hmm. What about the human resources and talent side of things? Because I would imagine that that's going to be one of the most difficult areas when it comes to scaling. There's of course just a continual competition for available talent, and that extends certainly to any kind of an MSSP type service. And if you want to scale and grow and have more customers that you have to interact with, then you're going to need more people skilled up and trained up. Of course, maybe you can also apply some automation to relieve some of that burden. So what's your take on all of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think automation and orchestration is very helpful to get those economies of scale, but it's never going to eliminate the humans from the need, especially when you're driving toward a consultative level organization, right? When you're putting those consultative services forward. So we talk about this all the time on Business Security Weekly about the skills gap, the talent shortage. And at the end of the day, I don't think there's a lack of talent out there. I think it's a lack of the skills that we need within our industry to be able to provide the services and the quality of services that we want to provide. And one of the mantras that I have is, I do not want to be a unicorn hunter. I can go out there and sit in a tree and try to hunt a unicorn all day long. I will never find one. What I want to be is a unicorn farmer. I want to bring that talent in-house that I groom, that I build. So having things like apprenticeship programs, internship programs, really looking at your organization and the roles within your organization and figuring out how you shift that talent left and start hiring at the entry level and be able to start shifting that talent upstream and really grooming that talent. So that way you're filling entry level positions and grooming that excellent talent upstream. Farm the unicorns. Do not go try and hunt them. They will be very expensive, or you will never find them.
Mm-hmm. One more question about best practices for you, Jason, which is, I'd love to ask you, with your vendor partners, where they come into play with all of this. And do you have any tips or recommendations in terms of ensuring that all of your various vendor and solution partners are also going to be able to concurrently scale with you, give you the resources you need from their end as you grow?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, evaluation of partner is always something that's on the table on a cadence. It's not during the initial vetting process. It's always reevaluated. And it's evaluated for many things: quality, the ability to support our customers, and their ability to scale with us. And there are times where you outgrow partners, and you have to start looking at new partnerships to be able to scale with you as a business. And I think that evaluation from a diligence perspective and a vendor risk perspective is something that you should be doing annually as an organization. Looking at those partners, evaluate them annually. Do they still fit the partnership that we expect? Can they scale with us? And are our clients satisfied with what they're bringing to the table for us? Very important. And then on the other side, we are also a vendor partner to others. We provide services to MSPs that don't have the services in our portfolio. So we have to be on the other side of that as well, making sure we're constantly driving quality. We're constantly getting feedback, constantly being able to scale with our partners to be able to support them. So I can see it from both sides of the aisle, but it's extremely important to have that cadence where you're constantly evaluating.
All right, excellent. Well, that was great. Really interesting stuff. I appreciate your insights. Jason, that's going to be our big idea in business. Next up is a segment that we like to call Dear Cyber for Hire. This is an advice column segment where we get to play marriage counselor between MSSPs and the clients to help mend fences when the relationship goes awry. And so the following letter has been dramatized and anonymized to protect the innocent. But the conflict represented here is a very real problem that companies face. And so, Jason, it's time to immerse ourselves in some juicy MSSP melodrama. This complaint comes from the provider side of the relationship. So, fellas, cue the music. Dear Cyber for Hire, do you ever stare at your partner and come to realize that you don't even recognize them anymore? That somewhere along the road they became a completely different person. I never thought such a cruel fate would befall me, and yet, here we are. My client has suffered a personality transplant, as their former director of IT has now been replaced by a total stranger. And I fear this newcomer will be questioning, scrutinizing our MSSP relationship. I'm going to have to prove myself all over again, justify our costs all over again, ensure continuity isn't lost as the new regime arrives. Frankly, it wouldn't shock me if the new guy recommends random changes to the CEO just to differentiate themselves from their predecessor. I never thought I'd have to start over from scratch. Where do I begin? Sincerely, reluctant to restart, reboot, and renew relationship in Reno. Jason, earlier this year, we had a letter where the client feared that an acquisition of their MSSP would change the dynamics of the relationship. Here, this is almost the opposite scenario, a change in leadership at the client. So whether it's a new IT director or security director or a new CEO or CFO, the change can certainly alter the previous established relationship. So what's the best way for the MSSP to hopefully make this uncertain transition go smoother and make a good first impression?
Yeah, and I mean, unfortunately, this happens often, right? I mean, business is always moving. New leadership is always coming into play. And at the end of the day, it's about forming strong relationships. So there's going to be a new incoming regime. You want to make sure that you get out there in front of any narrative, be able to build that relationship out of the gate. And then I would say, if you're looking at this and you realize that all of the eggs are in one basket, your only strategic relationship in the organization was with that IT director, and now a new IT director is coming in, that means all your eggs are in one basket. You need to build relationships across the business, right? So from our perspective, we're business partners first, right? Yes, we provide managed services. Yes, we provide professional services, but we are business partners. So we are having conversations with not only IT leaders, security leaders, but with CFOs, CEOs, COOs. We're having relationships at our VP level with VPs in those organizations, at director level with directors in those organizations. And we're building strong relationships across the entirety of the business. So that way, you're not pigeonholed by one relationship. If you're providing great service, you're providing quality service, you will have a group of evangelists within your client who can stick up for you when a new executive comes into play. That's the strategic move here.
Quick follow-up on that, Jason. So first sit-down meeting, in person or virtually with the new director of IT. You're the MSSP. How do you want that meeting to go? Like what should be on the table? What's part of the discussion there?
Number one, learning the personality and the drivers of that new IT director. Right? Get to know that person, what motivates them, what their strategy when they come in, what their 90-day plan is, 120-day plan is for the organization coming in, and show how you can help enable that, how you can get them to their goal. Because ultimately, as a managed service provider, you're there to make that stakeholder look great, to bring quality service to the table so that stakeholder looks incredible in front of the CEO or whomever they report to. You are there to serve. We are service providers. So keep that in mind, understand their motivation, understand how they need to align to the ultimate business goals that the CEO has brought down on them, and what's their mission for the next 120 days so you can help support it. right? Because that's ultimately, as a new executive coming in, you're going to have 120-day, 90-day maybe report out of your findings. That's typically what happens when you're in a new executive role, because that leader is going to, that executive's leader, manager is going to want to know what they found and how they're going to change, right? And how they're going to make positive change for the organization. So how can you help make positive impacts for that stakeholder?
Makes perfect sense, and it's very sound advice for anyone that finds themselves in this situation. Another relationship saved. Hopefully our listeners have learned from this and don't make the same mistake. And remember, if you've been struggling with your managed security services relationship, whether you're the user or the provider, we want to hear from you. So please write to us at cyberforhire@cyberriskalliance.com, and we might use your letter in a future episode. All right, well, it's almost time to wrap things up, but before we go, we want to get a little random now as we share with you, drumroll please, our irrelevant news of the week. Now, this is a real news pitch that I've received in my inbox for reasons that are, quite frankly, entirely inexplicable to me. Are you ready, Jason, for some randomness?
Let's do it.
All right. New research from online gaming platform Heartsland has revealed the most popular characters that fans cosplay, according to an analysis of Instagram hashtags. And so, Jason, you just said you're pretty big on comic books. So would you care to guess who is number one right now? I could give you a hint if you'd like.
Oh, God. Spider-Man?
That is an excellent guess. Spider-Man is not number one. Spider-Man is actually number two.
I was close.
Yes,
all right, cool.
With 710,000 approximately combined hashtags. Number one is a female villain character. Does that help?
Okay. Harley Quinn?
Harley Quinn, that's right. Mr. J, as she would say.
Yeah.
It is Harley Quinn. And then I believe number three was Batman. And then followed by the Joker. And so I want to ask you, Jason, have you, outside of Halloween, of course, have you ever cosplayed?
I have not ever. No. How about you?
No, nothing ever really outside of a Halloween. But if you were going to, let's say you were going to the big Comic-Con in San Diego and you wanted to go all out, you had to pick someone. Who's it going to be?
Oh, that's a tough one. Well, like I said earlier, I mean, obviously, my favorite character is Iron Man from Marvel, so I'd probably do something like that. Who else?
Well, you got to add some of those blinky lights, though, if you're going to be Iron Man.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of who else I would be. Who's the guy from God of War?
You're asking the wrong guy there.
Ragnarok guy. Yeah, yeah. It'd probably be like one of the God of War characters or something like that from a video game.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I was trying to think who it would be on my end, and it's like the same thing for me. Like, I like all sorts of stuff and all sorts of pop culture, and I'm super into Marvel, and I enjoy video games, but I don't know if I feel like a real super closeness to like any one particular character that I would just be like, I have to be this person.
Yeah.
Like I was thinking about it a little bit before the show, and I was like, I don't know if I love Futurama. I joke with our like producers for the show all the time about Dr. Zoidberg, because I do a little bit of like a Dr. Zoidberg impression too. And so I was like, so maybe Dr. Zoidberg would be like a pretty fun one to like dress up as like, a giant, like, lobster crab, mutant guy. And then be like,
nice.
Your music's bad and you should feel bad. It's me, Dr. Zoidberg. So anyway,
awesome.
So I don't know, like maybe
I do like Bender. Bender smokes cigars. I do like Bender.
That's right. Well, and that just brought us right back to robots again, and now we've just gone full circle for the entire episode.
So there is one robot I like.
That's right. All right. Well, it's been fun talking about costumes and dress up, but there's no way to disguise the fact that we're out of time for today's episode. But Fret not, we will be back again next week with episode number 26. I want to give one last thank you to my co-host for the day, Jason Albuquerque. Thank you so much for filling in. You were great. We hope to have you again sometime. Meanwhile, feel free to check out even more cybersecurity podcast content on the SC Media, MSSP Alert, and Channel E2E websites. Until next time, I'm Bradley Barth. Please reach out to us via our show page with your comments, questions, and insights about the business of cybersecurity. We'll keep the conversation going on the next episode of Cyber for Hire, your inside source for cyber outsourcing.